I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
So listen up, all you James and Joes. I'm talking about a man I know you know. He's the heart of civil rights history, always pushing peace and unity. He spread his word using weapons of love, always giving praise to the man above. Michael Luther King, his original name, but we all call him Dr. MLK. He was one of three, the middle child. His father, a pastor who rarely smiled. Growing up was good, with one mishap. Little King's grandma died of a heart attack. It struck him deeply, he was traumatized. One day later, King attempted suicide. King opted out of a two-story house. Breaths were held from man to mouse. Martin Luther King, always craving knowledge. Age 15, enrolled in Morehouse College. Straight out of school, he became a minister. Met a nice lady and proceeded to marry her. Stood up for his rights, gave sitting down a shot, sparking the beginning of the bus boycott. He led the protest for over a year. Day after day, the end was near. Without buses, things began to get stressful, but given the time, they were all success. But 2 years later, King wrote an idiom. First book titled A Stride Toward Freedom. In 1963, led the march on Washington to give a great speech. One get some. He planned it all out. He had a great theme. Standing on that podium, his face just gleamed. He stood by the mic and let the crowd scream. Proceeded to tell them he had a dream. It was on April 4th, 1968, that Martin Luther King realized his fate. Chilling on the balcony of Lorraine's motel, the result was Mr. King's final farewell.
Now, let me switch it over to another man, and I must tell you, I'm a very big fan. His name was Malcolm X and had a much different plan than Martin Luther King Jr. and his clan. He began as a little 1925, May 19th, in Omaha is where he arrived. No one knew that he would grow up to be one of the greatest civil rights leaders in history. Growing up with 7 brothers and sisters, mama was a homemaker, daddy was a minister. As a child, his family heard a lot of threats. Having to relocate made them all upset. But don't forget, the home in Lansing, Michigan was burned all around. The culprits never found. 2 years later, in the heart of the town, Malcolm's father was found dead, lying on the ground. Now, Malcolm Little was very good in school. He was much better than either me or you, but his teachers thought he was a no good screw, so he dropped out to find something else to pursue. And I guess the streets were calling his name, cause he moved to Harlem, started selling cocaine, and it went downhill once he started dealing. Him and his friend got slapped 10 years for stealing. In prison, he experienced a strange phenomenon. He was introduced to the Nation of Islam. It was then he started to study Muhammad and his work to maintain social economics for African Americans all around the globe. Malcolm's last name was what he didn't know, so he did the thing people didn't expect. Now the name Little was the unknown X. Yes, he was so fresh, giving freedom speeches all across the US. And when it comes to staying fly, he was the best. From his feet to his neck, he was dressed to impress. If a white lays a hand on you, send him to the grave. That's the philosophy that made him brave, speaking for justice, freedom, and respect, until the day he took his last breath on February 21st, 1965. At the age of 39, young Malcolm X died.
Men fighting for the very same cause. It's indeed no doubt they deserve an applause. But when you get down to it and you have to pick one, it's Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, you're done.
Martin Luther King stood for non-violence, but Malcolm X couldn't keep his mouth silent. He wanted whites to receive what they deserve, a kick to the face and a mouthful of dirt.
But because Malcolm X was so violent, it was hard to get the general public behind him. But with Dr. King, it was a different situation. The public knew peace would bring liberation.
Young X blacks demanded rights by any means necessary, but to the public his methods were a little scary. Unlike Martin Luther King, Malcolm had to bring the heat to compete with King, who liked to sing. You know I never quit, but yes, I must admit that Mr. Martin Luther King was legit. He had a great wit, and yes, he did commit. So listen up to TZ and G when we spit.
So we have to have a new approach, a new appraisal. And this new appraisal and new approach has to be in tune with the reality of the conditions that we are in after having been thoroughly brainwashed by this blue-eyed white man. Some of them have brown eyes.